Hey, I'm Bob Waliszewski, the director of Plugged In, and I am happy to have Dr. Kathy Koch with me. Kathy, I know in this book you're not saying we need to go back to like the 1800s when technology didn't exist. We know that going forward, we're living in a world with technology. You see the good, the bad, the ugly. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the good first of all. What's the good of technology that you saw and that parents need to hold on to?
Yeah, great way to start, because it is here to stay and we're not going to bash technology. That's not going to get us anywhere. I like the research that we can do together as a family. I like that if you're going to go on a family vacation, you can hang out on the web together and choose the national park you're going to go visit. I like that kids can get involved in researching which flower bouquet to send grandmother on the occasion of whatever, and they can look over mom's shoulder as they're investigating at a website. So you can actually bond with the family as you're doing research, as you're thinking things through. There are games we can play together as a family that can actually bond us in ways that should never take the place of human contact without technology, but it can be a good thing. Another thing that might surprise people that I think is good is that our children are exposed to the brokenness of the world. When they're aware of brokenness and dysfunction and all the stuff that's going on, they're like, whoa, Mom, I could solve that problem. I've got ideas. And they're already at a young age beginning to see themselves as people who can invest and speak life into brokenness. And I think that's a really powerful thing.
So that's part of the good.
It is.
Obviously, there's a lot more good.
It is.
But there's also the bad and the ugly. So there's some things that really concern you going forward that families are facing with this screens and teens world that we live in.
Yeah.
Now, talk about some of the concerns.
I guess I'd start with the isolation that I think it can cause. I really want the family to live in the living room. I want the family to live together. I want moms and dads and kids to hang together and to know each other well and to have conversations and play board games and go walk in the park and shoot hoops in the driveway. And so often technology wins, and we let that addiction, if you will, cause us to go hang out there, and we're investigating maybe even legitimate things, but we're not with our family.
Right.
Moms
or you're with your family, but everyone's on their... Yeah.
Exactly. Everybody is separate together or alone together. So again, anything well done, overdone is badly done. So I am concerned about the choice to isolate. The very thing that can cause us to be depressed is the technology, but when we're depressed, where do we go? To our technology, rather than to a person who might have a blessed word for us that would be an encouragement. So I'm certainly concerned by isolation, concerned by the fact that kids think everything should be quick-paced and vibrant and loud and colorful and about them, and they can win any game they play. I mean, that we can talk about that all day. There's just a lot of those little things that aren't little that kids learn. The reboot button, here's an example. The reboot button's a beautiful thing, right? If I get home and my internet's out, I can unplug it, plug it back in, and it fixes itself. It's miraculous. I think it's a fabulous invention. But it was invented after I have lived life long enough to understand that my world does not really come with a reboot button.
Right.
My heart doesn't, my mind doesn't, my soul doesn't. Today happens, and today causes tomorrow. A lot of young people believe that they can just reboot their way through life. So there's not any consequence for anything negative that happens. I can just pretend that didn't exist. Very damaging, right?
Right. In your book, you say something about when talking to groups, you'll say something like, how many are you concerned that your kids are spending way too much time on the web or in front of screens or whatever? And you said, every hand goes up primarily, almost every hand. But then you say, how many of you are spending too much time and whatever? And you get a bunch of nervous giggles. Speak to that.
Oh, seriously. Though, and some people raise their hand at that moment. Like they are willing to admit, and that's even one of the reasons they're in the room. The other people look at me like, duh. Of course I could raise my hand, I'm on it too much. So they're admitting that. What's very interesting, Bob, is when I ask teenagers, how many of you would like for your mom to put down her phone? What do you think happens then?
80%.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other 20%, I think, are lying. I think they just didn't bother raising their hand. We're all addicted, we're all isolated, we're all choosing to prioritize that rather than this. We maybe think we know this well enough, when in fact we really don't.
Now you do, in your book, you talk about sometimes where phone-free time is very important, like bedtimes. And even, I think you even talked about a vacation. Why not go on a whole vacation where no one has a phone? Talk about some of those ideas that you have for families.
Yeah, thanks. Tech-free zones and tech-free days possibly. Again, maybe mom has her phone and it's on silent because that's an emergency number. I respect that. But it doesn't have to be on your person all the time. You don't have to check it constantly. I like the car being digital free, believe it or not, unless there's great talk radio or something like that they could listen to. when we're captured in a car and we're together, we can make eye contact or not. Kids tell me they like talking to us when they don't have to make eye contact, because if they say something that's going to hurt our heart, they don't want to see our facial expression. That's also why they like talking in the dark at night at bedtime. So the bedroom is digital free. There's a lot of reasons to make that true. The last hour before bedtime, maybe no technology because your brain slows down. Dinner time, restaurants, digital free. Somebody will talk, and then you have silence, which is actually good for the brain. But then in that silence, somebody will talk, and they're often going to talk longer if they think you're really going to engage with them.
Yeah, a quote you found from Steven Spielberg. It says, "Technology can be our best friend, and technology can also be the biggest party pooper of our lives. It interrupts our own story. It interrupts our ability to have a thought or a daydream, to imagine something wonderful, because we're too busy bridging the walk from the cafeteria back to the office on the cell phone." Expand on Steven Spielberg's thought there.
Yeah, I agree with him, right? That we're missing out. Why do we think there's not something of value in our presence? A person who matters? Do we not put people first? Again, if we're Christ followers, people matter more than things. People in front of us matter more than people not in front of us. That's just a biblical, other-centered view of life, right? To put people first.
Kathy, talk to me about multitasking.
It's not as good of a thing as a lot of people think it is. It is true that younger people can multitask better than those of us who are older because their brains are wired during the season when they are multitasking. So it does feel more natural. But it's how they're avoiding boredom, and it's how they're avoiding responsibility. So rather than persevering deep in biology, it's too hard, therefore, let's go over here to this movie. So they're actually learning behaviors that you don't want them to learn, which is, I don't have to persevere, I don't have to dig for wisdom, I can just avoid pain and go off to something that's in happy land. Also, they don't multi-process. So you can multitask, but you can't multi-process. So you're listening to the lyrics, you're watching the sitcom, and you're trying to do your homework. Whoa, something's going to give there. We also know from research that we don't do 2 or 3 things at once. We're actually stopping, starting, stopping, starting, stopping, starting, stopping, starting. And that takes energy. We might not come back to the exact same place every time to restart. So the kids actually don't know how much more energy it's taking them. If they would have done one thing at once and then moved on, they would have done it so much better, and it would have been done more efficiently. I often challenge kids to understand that it's efficiency and excellence. So maybe you would have earned the same grade, but it took you 3 times as long to finish the assignment, and that's not good stewardship, because there's other things we would love to do as a family with your time. So that's probably how I would address it. And then I would say to the moms and dads listening, are we modeling for our kids that there's value in doing one thing at a time, doing it well, and then moving on? Or do we avoid boredom by also thinking that we have to be in this world of multitasking? It's one of the reasons, by the way, they think they can drive and text at the same time.
Which we all know is awfully scary.
Absolutely. They think they can do it, though, because in their bedroom they're multitasking. And they don't understand the brain attention, of course, that it's taking to do what they're doing, much less to drive a car.
Wow.
Yeah, great question to ask. It's really a significant thing to think about.
Kathy, thank you for being part of the Plugged In vodcast. And I know you're a Plugged In fan because in chapter 7 of your book, you give a shout out to Plugged In, and we thank you for doing that and wish you all the best. So with that, it's time to sign off.